17 minutes before 8 o'clock right now, and Sony has done it again.
So this TV right here might be the very best 65-inch OLED that you can buy today, and in my mind there are three big reasons why, and there are more than that, but I want to focus mainly on the things that make this OLED TV different. Because believe it or not, a lot of the big brands that you'll be very familiar with share a lot of the same tech and sometimes even exactly the same OLED panels. So you've got to think of it like this. It's kind of a blank canvas for the brands to add their own artistic flair to, and that is the fine art. And TV tech is something that Sony have been working on for the last 65 years. And check this out, this is Sony's first ever TV, the TV 8III. It's got more narrow bezels than an iPhone SE from a couple of years ago. And so that this video doesn't take 65 years, let's speed run through the unboxing and the setup process. First out of the box are two solid metal legs, followed by a classic remote with a full number pad. Darth Vader would be proud of this one. You also get a much more modern, compact, smart Bluetooth remote with shortcut buttons to popular streaming apps, and it does have a built-in mic. You also get Sony's map of Middle-earth, which is a quick start guide, 4 screws for the legs, 4 Sony branded batteries for the remotes, Sony's Bible of health and safety, which is about a week's worth of reading material, and plastic back covers to hide the ports and power leads. When it comes to fixing the legs onto the TV, there are actually 2 positions, a high and low, and these just require 2 screws per leg, and that's it. Once powered up, you simply scan the QR code and log in with your Google account, and that's it, you're good to go. Okay, so when it comes to the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II's design, it is as premium as you would expect it to be. Lots of metal is used here on the frame, on the stands. When you attach the plastic back covers, even the back of the TV looks good. And it's reasonably slim. The bezels are nice and narrow. There's a little bit more of a chin at the bottom. Some very subtle branding on the left corner of the screen. And then you've got this really nice black metal trim all the way around. And there are no physical buttons on this TV, but you do get the 2 remotes, and you can also connect your phone via the Sony Bravia Connect app, which means you can always use that as a last resort if you do lose both of the remotes. Now, one of the first visible design differences that separates Sony's OLED from the rest is the legs, and they're very minimal when you look at them from the front, which is what you want. You want minimal distractions that can take your eye away from the screen. The TV is also very sturdy on these legs. And the fact that you can adjust the height to accommodate a soundbar is kind of a big deal, because there are TVs out there that just cannot do that. And I've got this one set up in the higher position because I have the Sony Bravia Bar 8 here just underneath it. But if you do have it in the lower position, the gap between the TV stand and the bottom of the TV is literally millimeters. And of course, around the back, you do have the usual VESA mounting points if you do decide you want to put this on the wall. The ports are located on the left side if you're looking at the TV from the front, and they consist of 2 HDMI 2.0 and 2 HDMI 2.1, and those 2 2.1 ports support 120 Hz. And one of these is the enhanced audio return channel, which is one of the options and probably the best option for hooking up audio equipment. You also got a LAN input, satellite and TV antenna ports, as well as 2 USB ports and an optical audio out. And they even add a mute switch because this TV is a Google TV and it can make use of Google's Assistant. But if you don't want your TV listening for wake words 24/7, you can just flick the switch if you need a little more privacy.
Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy!
Okay, so here's number 1 of the big 3 reasons why I believe this might be the greatest OLED TV out there today, and it is because of this. A lot of people think that all OLED TVs are alike, but actually there's a new type of OLED tech on the market, and it's said to be superior to the more classic WOLED tech that is much more commonly used, and even Sony have used it in the past. And this TV right here, the Bravia 8 Mark II, has a newer OLED panel, and it's actually in its 3rd generation now, and it's called Quantum Dot OLED. Now, I know some of you might be wondering, what makes QD OLED better than WOLED? Well, to put it very simply, first of all, it can be brighter, and in fact this TV is 50% brighter than the Mark I version of the Bravia 8. Also, it can be more power efficient and show superior colors, and it can also absorb light a little better, so that will reduce the amount of reflections on the display without even having to have a matte finish. Now, just so you know, there is one other flagship TV out there that I'm aware of that uses the exact same QD OLED panel, but it's what Sony does with this Quantum Dot OLED canvas that really makes the difference here. Among the experts, many consider Sony's XR picture processing to be S tier, if not the best on the market. And this applies to colors, contrast, motion smoothness and everything, but this is especially true when it comes to upscaling lower res content and smoothing noisy images. So if you do watch lots of regular TV and standard definition content, well, you're going to benefit from Sony's XR abilities and AI upscaling the most. But on the other hand, let's say you're all about watching the highest quality HDR content. Well, the Sony Bravia 8II has a few tricks up its sleeve in the form of Dolby Vision support, as well as HDR10 and HLG. And straight out of the box, it's got some very color accurate picture profiles that you can use straight away. For example, the cinema mode. And when you are watching 4K HDR content, this is really where the Bravia 8II shines. You get incredible brightness, actual infinite blacks, because each pixel can be switched off, unlike an LED TV. You get amazing colors, some say far superior to WOLED, and very smooth color gradients with no visible banding. The clarity and the sharpness is just right, and it doesn't over sharpen pictures, which is really important if you want to watch content the way that the creator intended it to be seen. And I could talk all day about how good the picture quality is here on the Bravia 8II, because it really is its strongest attribute. But let's move on quickly to the second reason why I believe this TV might be the greatest OLED out there right now. Did you know that when you go to a movie theater or a cinema, there are actually speakers behind the screen? Well, it is true, and as far as I know, Sony are the only TV manufacturer who actually do this with their TVs. They put forward-facing drivers behind the glass pointing straight at you. There are actually 2 actuators and 2 subwoofers, combined total power of 50 watts, and that's equal to being hit in the face by a TVA timekeeper. Metaphorically speaking, and of course I am exaggerating a bit, but the sound quality on this TV is very good for regular TV watching and even for movies as well. The soundstage is really nice. It does lack a little bit of bass though. Now what's interesting about this sound setup is it actually uses the glass on the display to amplify the sound and actually match the sound source on the screen. So if there's a conversation on screen, someone's on the left, someone's on the right, it'll actually sound like the sound is coming from their mouths. And this is really tech that you don't see every day, or in this case at all, because it's all behind the scenes, just like an actual movie theater. And another feather in the cap for the Sony Bravia 8 is Sony's own voice zoom, which can actually lift the vocal range out of the audio and enhance it above all of the background sounds and music and explosions, so that it's much clearer for you to hear. Now there's definitely going to be some people that want to hook up some home theater audio to the TV, including myself. And if you do that, you might think that that immediately makes the acoustic surface speakers less useful. Well, that is true, unless you get one of these, a Sony Bravia Bar 8, or actually any of the Sony Bravia bars, and even their previous soundbars, because with the Sony soundbars, you can connect up an eARC just like a regular soundbar for your Dolby Atmos audio signals and DTS:X, but you also get the option to hook up Sony's Center Sync channel, which allows the acoustic surface to work alongside the rest of the home theater setup, and the speakers behind the glass will act as the center channel. And another great thing about this particular soundbar, and even the Bravia 9, which is one up from this, is it does have the HDMI pass-through port. So that way you're not sacrificing one of your high-speed ports just for audio, because you can still plug in a PlayStation or another games console here and still get those HDMI 2.1 speeds. And something else that I really like about Sony soundbars is the fact that you can actually bolt on rear channel speakers at a later date, and there are a couple of different versions of rear channels to add. And then there's also a couple of different subs that you can choose to go with your setup, and you don't necessarily have to buy them on day one. You could always add them on later. And I personally think if you're going to get a really good TV like this, it is worth pushing the boat out and getting some Dolby Atmos hardware. And my advice would be to maybe also add the RS5 rear channel speakers, because those have upward firing drivers that can be placed behind you, so you get that full Atmos sound. Okay, now let's talk about the third biggest selling point for this TV, because picture and sound are arguably the most important. However, content is king. And the king of content discovery on the planet right now is definitely Google, and this Bravia 8 Mark II runs on Google TV, which yes, other brands do have access to, but Sony have added a little bit of their own Bravia magic on top. And they have thrown in some exclusive Sony apps and features. For example, their own exclusive Pictures Core movie streaming service. This streaming app is actually home of the world's largest IMAX enhanced movie library and can deliver content via Sony's Pure Stream. And this service can actually transmit the data 3 to 4 times faster than other popular streaming services like Disney and Netflix, which means more picture data can be sent more quickly, which can result in higher quality content. And of course, it does depend on the content source. The newer the movie, the better it's going to look. And also, you should probably know that this TV does support Wi-Fi 6, so you can get those optimal Wi-Fi speeds. There's also PlayStation Remote Play pre-installed. So if you have a console in another room and you can't be bothered to hook it up to this specific TV, you can just connect over your local area network and play your PlayStation like that. And if you hook up an Xbox to this TV, it does support Dolby Vision gaming, which some popular TVs do not. And if you're a PlayStation player, there are some really nice ecosystem features like auto HDR tone mapping and auto genre picture modes, as well as a bunch of other tweaks that make the PlayStation experience on this TV even more seamless. And it does support 120Hz gaming, VRR and ALLM, and the gaming setting interface is also really nice. You got some really nice features here, and you can even scale down the size of the screen if you're into more competitive gaming. And just of course, it does have all of the standard smart TV stuff like Chromecast, Apple AirPlay, Alexa, and maybe most importantly, you get Google's app library and search, which is the best in the business right now. And I've got a feeling if we see Gemini AI come to the Google TV platform, that could really be a game changer and maybe game over for some other TV platforms. Now, there is one more thing that I haven't mentioned yet, and that is the price. So the prices do fluctuate quite a lot with the seasons, and at the time of this video, the 55-inch version of this TV is $2,499, and the 65-inch, this one right here, is $2,999.
Give me something for the pain and let me die.
Now, just so you know that I'm not shilling for Sony here, there are things that can be better on this TV, in my personal opinion. For example, I would prefer it if the power lead was on the same side as where all the other cables are. That way, you have a much neater, streamlined cable management system instead of having all your cables on one side and then one random cable on the other. I also really like how Sony used to make stands that could sit right back against the wall or right at the back of your TV stand. With this particular feet layout, there is quite a big gap between the back of the TV and the wall. Also, I did like how Sony used to allow for the narrow stance of the stand, which is really handy if you have a slightly more narrow TV stand, unlike this one. Also, recently I did look at Sony's Bravia 7 from last year, and that TV had a very similar remote to this, although that remote was better than this one because it charged via USB-C, and it also had backlit buttons. And that TV also had a button just under the light bar at the center, which meant you could turn it off, fully power it down, or even power cycle the TV without having to use the remote or switch it off at the wall or even use your phone. But anyway, that's just me nitpicking. This is still one of the best OLED TVs out there in my opinion. If you do want to check out the latest prices, I have found some fantastic deals. They are affiliate links, so if you use those, you will be supporting the channel. And if you have found this video useful, please let me know in the comments. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. And I will see you in the next one. Don't be late.